Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. Here, we aim to bring you the experience, strength, and hope of professionals working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. Our mission is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a recognized disorder. Here, we discuss all things recovery, exploring the many pathways people take towards abstinence in order to achieve a health-forward lifestyle. We hope to inspire you to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, and share your journey with others. And hopefully the message will spread.
Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. My name is Dr. Vera Tarman, and I am your host today, speaking with Dr. Amelia Scott Barrett, an expert in migraines. Dr. Barrett is a Stanford-trained neurologist with over 30 years of experience in private practice. She received her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Smith College and obtained her medical degree from the University of Colorado School of Medicine in 1995. Dr. Barrett is board certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology and is a founder of Migraine Relief Code, an organization offering online integrative medicine tools for migraine sufferers. She is also interested in incorporating genomic research into her approach for migraine treatment. Please check out her really interesting TED Talk on migraines that she did in 2023. Welcome, Dr. Barrett.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Can you tell us a little bit about your interest in migraine?
Sure. Yeah. I have migraines and both of my daughters do. My mom does. So we have strong migraine genetics in my family. So that's my personal interest. I was also a neurologist in private practice for 20 years before I began including a more integrative approach online. And I primarily took care of people with headaches, mostly women, during that time. So it's really impacted my professional work as well.
You said there's a really high prevalence of migraines. And is it actually getting worse over time?
What we know is that migraine is actually the leading cause of disability in women under 50. So we found that out from the Global Burden of Disease report in 2019. I think that there are many reasons that is happening. I think that it can be related to things like toxins in our food. It can also be related to adrenal challenges in daily life. It can be related to GI issues like leaky gut. For many reasons, this is becoming a more disabling problem, especially for young women.
Give us a thumbnail description of a migraine. How is that different than a tension headache?
Really good question. Migraine is much more likely to be on one side of the head than both. It is much more likely to be a throbbing headache that worsens when you bend over. It is much more likely to give you nausea or vomiting, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity. Now, what happens and what gets confusing for people, though, is that as people have more and more migraines, they lose those characteristics. So even if you don't feel like your headaches have all of those characteristics, you could still be having migraines. Only about 5 or 10% of people who actually have migraines have been seen by a doctor, diagnosed, and treated with migraine-specific medications. That is a very small percent of people. So I don't want people to say, oh gosh, I don't have migraines because my headaches are on both sides of my head, therefore I must not have it. You could still quite easily have it. If you have ever had a headache that's like that, then you have a migraine brain. If you have ever had a visual aura where you see flashing, jagged lights in one corner of your vision for 15 minutes, then you have a migraine brain. And if you have a migraine brain, it's important to take care of yourself as though all of those headaches have a migraine quality, even if they don't meet all of those diagnostic criteria that I outlined.
When you describe those zigzags, I don't have migraine headaches, but I have on occasion had those zigzag things for about 15 minutes. And I think where's the headache? So you can have the prodrome without the headache.
Absolutely. And we would classify the zigzaggy flashing lights as an aura. Now, a prodrome can be something that goes on for a day or so before you get a migraine. And that can be any one of the symptoms that we talked about. It can also be much more nonspecific. Feeling like your brain is just not plugged in, brain foggy, feeling extra tired, feeling like you're yawning, having food cravings. All of these things can be part of a migraine prodrome, which happens as much as a day before you ever experience an aura or pain.
You said that your mother had migraines, your children have migraines. So there's obviously a genetic quality. Can you talk a little bit about the genetics? And I know you're interested in the genetics of that.
Sure. And I do want to make one thing really clear. Genetic does not mean that a mom or dad had to have it in order for you to get it. Your genetics are the way you came together. Half of your genes came from your mom, half of your genes came from your dad. Maybe the combinations they had did not create a migraine brain, but the combinations that you have do increase your chances of having a migraine brain. That's an important piece. The second thing we know is that migraine travels genetically with many other conditions: anxiety, depression, gut issues, IBS, and food sensitivities, other GI issues. We know that migraine travels along with other diseases that we label separately, and yet they have the same underlying causes, whether that is abnormalities in how we process neurotransmitters, how our gut works, how we absorb nutrients, how our body gets rid of toxins. All of those factors work together. And then the third thing we've discovered is that there are 160 different genes minimum that increase your chance of migraine and that are strongly linked with migraine. Now, we have discovered this from very recent studies that we call genome-wide association studies, GWAS, and they have fed thousands and thousands of sets of DNA into these massive computers and then linked them with people's symptoms. And that's how we have found that these are very reliable. We are 100% sure that those 160 genes are solid, and we're learning more every day.
Okay. What's the hormonal link between migraines? Why is it that some people, their migraines get better after menopause, and for others, they don't, they get worse?
Yeah, really good question. And I think that is a subset of people who get better after migraine. So I'm just going to say that most people have more than one cause of their migraines.
Yeah.
I think there's many people search for the cause of their migraines, and they think that if they just fix that one thing, everything will be okay. Sadly, that is not the truth. Migraine is far more complicated than that. Most people have 5, 10, 15 different things going on in their body, and it's all of those together, all of those hidden problems going on under the surface that you may or may not even know about, that lead to your experience of migraines. And when people really truly do just have maybe one or two things causing their migraines, and that's hormones and maybe one other thing, then when they hit menopause and their hormones stabilize, they don't have those monthly fluctuations anymore. Those are the people who get better. But for the vast majority of people with hormonal headaches, that's only one of the causes. And they have headaches other days of the month. They don't just have that strictly hormonal headache the day or two before your cycle, before you bleed. And then they have headaches outside of that. The vast majority of people do. So I think that's why people don't always get better with menopause, because it's a complicated condition and there's more than one cause.
You talk in your literature about the concept of chronification. Can you talk a little bit about that? That means once you have a migraine, you're more likely to continue to have one?
Yeah, that's part of it. To pin down that definition a little bit more, we use the word chronification in neurology to refer to the changes that happen in the brain as a result of repeated migraines. So we have been researching this for 20, 25 years. And what's happened recently is that we're able to see it on a lot of these new types of scans that we do. Previously, it was much harder to figure it out. But now, wow, we can just do a scan on somebody and see it. So if you are having more than about 2 or 3 headache days a week, any kind of headache, doesn't have to be migraine, any kind of headache, then essentially your brain gets used to it. It's like learning to play the piano. It's like learning to ride a bike. There are new sections of your brain that are created, unfortunately, that get really good at making migraines. This is neuroplasticity. Exactly. And what it means is that your medications stop working as well as they used to, and you get primed to have more and more headaches. Wow. So people will say things like, I feel like everything causes me to have a migraine now. I can't figure out what my triggers anymore. Everything seems to be a trigger. My old triggers aren't my triggers now. So those are the kinds of things that people will experience when this is happening to them. And the whole reason I did a Tedx talk about this is that I want people to take their migraines more seriously earlier on. When people are only having, a couple headache days a week, that's when I want them to take action. That's when I want them to dig their heels in and say, enough. I'm not going to let this go on any farther because things are going to get worse much quicker than you think.
You talk about the pearls of pushing through headaches. Like you don't want to do that. You want to stop the headache.
Absolutely. That manifests a couple of different ways. So if you have a headache, I think we all feel like, oh, it'll get better. I'll take a nap, or we all want to not have to take medications. We want to think that it's going to go away. But I always encourage people, hop right on that headache. Day one, treat it, make it go away and stay away with whatever you have to use.
Give me some treatment options that you would do on a person in early, like 2 headaches a week versus the one that's getting them much more frequently. I was talking about the standard stuff, Imitrex and Amitriptyline.
Absolutely. You can use those up to 2 days a week. And if that's working, then it's okay. I would encourage people who are at that headache frequency to understand that they are on the edge of a cliff, literally. It would be very easy to fall off that cliff for things to get worse. And I would encourage people to take more steps towards figuring out what's going on under the surface, towards untangling all those different hidden things that are going on under the surface at that point. If they're past that point, chronification is not irreversible. You can certainly improve the health of your brain and see healing and recovery from that place. It's harder, easier to do earlier on, harder to do later on, but not impossible.
It sounds to me like you would advocate aggressive medical therapy.
Absolutely. But I don't want people to rely on medications alone because I feel like that just masks the symptoms. What we do in modern medicine is we give you a pill for your headaches. We give you a pill for your anxiety. We give you a pill for your gut. And that's all the same stuff under the surface. Let's just fix what's under the surface.
Yeah. Well,
and you don't need those pills nearly as often.
As a doctor prescribing these medications, I'm aware that we can cause the phenomenon of rebound headache. So if I continually give these medications, that itself will bring on headaches. So how do you get out of that, where you treat aggressively, but you don't want that dilemma of rebound?
Really good question. I think you have to figure out what's going on under the surface.
Okay.
Get a recovery plan in place first, unique. Use precision medicine tools. This is customized. There is no one size fits all, unfortunately. I wish it were that easy. It's just not. But get your own customized personal recovery plan in place. And then you get to a place where you're not having as many headaches. It is much easier to get out of rebound there. Mm-hmm. It is extremely difficult to stop all your meds, grit your teeth, and work your way through it because you haven't fixed any of the things that are causing them in the first place. You're just making it harder by taking away anything that gives you a glimpse of relief of pain. I'm not a fan of the grit your teeth approach.
So let's look at the root cause situation. What you've told me so far, it could be anything. It could be genetics or predisposition. It could be hormones. It could be foods. Where do we start?
Yeah. So let me boil it down into 4 different categories.
Okay.
And the first is nutrients. Many people have nutrient deficiencies that they don't know about, especially of things that are important for the health of the brain, even if they're eating pretty clean. It is just really hard to get optimal nutrition from your foods alone in the modern day food world.
And what do you mean when you say nutrition? It's like omega-3 foods?
Yeah, omega-3 is a good one. There was a fascinating study published in May of 2021 showing that if you eat salmon, 4 to 8 ounces of salmon every day, and switch your cooking oil to a combination of olive and macadamia, the macadamia is in there, so you can use olive oil to cook at a higher temperature, right? Because we need to fry occasionally. Yeah. If you just do those 2 things, you can cut your headaches in half in 3 months.
If you're a vegetarian, can you just eat a lot of flaxseed?
You can, but it's harder because your body has to convert the flax form of omegas into the DHA and EPA that your brain needs. And that conversion takes out a lot of the omegas that are in flax, chia, hemp, etc. So it's much harder to do if you do not eat fish.
And conversely, if you're eating a lot of omega-6, in other words, processed food, that would be predisposing you to migraines.
Exactly. Yeah. Really good point.
What any other nutrients you want to talk about before we get to the other points?
Sure. Vitamin D is another big one. I think that the word has gotten out about how important vitamin D is for the brain. Yeah. It helps regulate your moods. It makes you less prone to anxiety and depression. That's fairly clear. It improves memory. We know that it's important for people who have mild cognitive decline. There are many studies showing that it reduces headaches for people with headaches and migraines. So vitamin D is another essential element. And then there are half a dozen other things that are important for brain health overall. But I think that those two are a good starting point, just as examples of nutrients that probably many people have heard of.
Okay, so listeners of Food Junkies have eaten a lot of ultra-processed foods and have essentially become addicted to it. You mentioned cravings when you said at the prodrome of migraine. Could it actually be that because they're eating that kind of food, they're predisposing themselves to migraines, that's actually migraine behavior is mimicking an addictive pattern of eating? Or am I going out on a limb here?
No, I think that's a really interesting point. I don't think that has been explored much in the literature, but I think it's a really interesting idea. And I definitely think it's true that these processed foods are addicting. The food companies hire focus groups to tell them which things people eat, and it just hijacks your reward circuits and makes you want more and more. Of course, that's what they're trying to sell people, and it's incredibly hard to switch over to a nutrient-dense diet. It's a completely different education about nutrition and eating and the role of food in your life and how much time and energy it takes. It's a big adjustment. I'm sure many of your people are familiar with that.
Yeah, okay. They're certainly familiar with the brain fog and the cravings and the fatigue and some of that stuff you've described, and irritable bowel. So this is an interesting phenomenon. Okay, so you said there were 4?
Yeah, so nutrients is the first category, and those are things that people usually are not aware of. You have to do fairly extensive testing to get to the bottom of that and fix it.
How would you do the testing of that? Sorry to interrupt.
I teach this in my online courses. My online courses are there to help people navigate through all the confusing, conflicting information out there and to empower you with the exact information you need to get, how to get it on your own without a doctor's order, and how to implement. So they're primarily educational and empowering for people to learn a new skill set to improve their brain health and reduce their migraines and engage in a recovery plan.
You can get that on your online site. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yeah, no worries. The second category is leaky gut. And I'm using that term very broadly. It includes anything from food sensitivities all the way up to something like IBS. We know that the gut is linked with migraine. There have been many review studies showing the genetic linkages, showing the linkages between the two diseases. If you just look at pure epidemiology, like the statistics of who gets what. So we know that there's a link there. So a period of gut healing is typically part of the process. Now, the reason that this is super important for people with migraine is that these gut conditions allow more inflammation into your body. Now, I just want you to think of inflammation as being pain chemicals. At its root, that's what happens with inflammation. Your body's making pain chemicals. Those pain chemicals travel up to the brain, trigger a nerve in the brain, and then that's what starts the headache. So if you have a lot of inflammation coming into your body through the gut, you have a constant source of headache triggers coming in. And that's a common hidden cause that people don't know about because you don't always have symptoms from it.
A lot of people complain about inflammatory bowel conditions like bloating and diarrhea. And you're saying that this is all potentially part of the whole headache syndrome.
Yeah, it's all linked.
Yeah. So that's the second.
So that's problem number 2. So we've got nutrients, we've got GI health. The third issue that has not been talked about as much yet, but I think this is the future of headache medicine, it's toxins. We all know that tens of thousands of new chemicals have come onto our planet in the past, 100 years? Very few of them have been studied. Many of them we already know are damaging to our health. So the reason this is so important for people with migraine and other brain conditions is that toxins selectively impair our mitochondria. Now, our mitochondria are the batteries for our cells. And as you can imagine, nothing works very well without a battery. So if we have something in there constantly making our batteries weak, of course our brain doesn't work right. We don't have energy. Instead, we feel fatigued. We have brain fog. We don't feel mentally sharp, clear, focused, right? These are the things that happen. And we know for sure that toxins are linked with things like Parkinson's disease. Toxins are linked to Alzheimer's disease. This is not debated. This is fact. This is not even edgy science. So I think that over time, as our ability to detect these toxins in testing and our ability to get rid of the toxins increases, this will become much more a part of mainstream medicine. Right now, it's still new, it's a little on the fringes, but I think it is inevitable that we will start to understand the impact of these toxins on our body more as time goes on.
Can you give an example of what you mean by toxins?
Mercury. It's in our fillings, it's in our food, it's in our fish. And it is a very common cause of, let me rephrase that. It very commonly causes headaches. Now, the trouble is that many of the tests, like if you go to your doctor and say, hey, test me for mercury. I listened to this podcast with this doctor and I want to know, is mercury a problem for me? The result you'll get back is they have established a cutoff point, and they have said anything below that cutoff point, we're just going to call it normal. Anything above that, we're going to call it abnormal. But the truth is, mercury has no purpose in your body. None, zero, none. It shouldn't be there at all. So let's say that they say less than 5 is normal. That's just normal because so many people have it. It's not normal because that's optimal. So that's what I mean by it's really difficult to even get this information right now. You have to do very specialized testing to get at the truth. But when you do that and you understand the science, you understand the big picture, you start to see, oh, everything about how we're detecting and treating toxins is altered. It's not as it should be. Over time, this will all get straightened out, but that's where we're at right now.
Do you have another example besides mercury?
We know that BPA, phthalates are
that's right, BPA.
Disruptors.
Plastics.
Exactly. They disrupt your hormones. They predispose women to hormonal headaches. One of your questions early on in this podcast was, why do people get hormonal headaches? What happens with menopause, et cetera? We were talking about that a little bit. A lot of people think that these endocrine disruptors are part of the reason that hormonal headaches are so common now and that migraine is so much more common in women under 50. We know that things like pesticides, glyphosate, can selectively impair your mitochondria. We know that volatile organic compounds can do the same. There are so many different ones. Other heavy metals, I've done extensive metal testing on many people. People are shocked at what they find in their body.
Okay, so this, what can we eat that doesn't have mercury, that doesn't have BPA? What's the solution once you find these things?
I think it's a combination of two things. So I think there are two phases of this process. Number one, find out if it's in your body, and your doctor's not going to be able to do that. You're going to need to be able to go to somebody like me or a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath or somebody who's trained in how to use these new tools. My path to that is functional medicine. I'm also an MD, so I see both sides of that coin. But you have to go get this specialized testing. And then I think the second piece of it is you need to know how your detox pathways work. And that's where the genetics comes into it. It's possible to get testing done that shows you how well does your body get rid of toxins. Mine doesn't. So I have had problems with toxicity in the past. I had high mercury. I had high arsenic. I had high levels of mold. I had a lot of problems to deal with. And this was at a point in my life where I was going through menopause and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is horrible. Am I getting early Alzheimer's? What's happening to my brain? Why can't I remember where I put my phone? But
so what did you do?
Got tested. I found out I was high in all these things. I also found out that my detox pathways don't work great, that I'm going to have to work on this for the rest of my life if I want to avoid worse migraines, forgetting about things that are far worse than just where my phone is, reducing my chance of Alzheimer's, reducing my chance of Parkinson's, keeping my brain cells happy and healthy and energetic and functioning at their best. And all those things are doable. It's just a skill set you have to learn and slowly make those changes and apply them in your life. Nobody can change this overnight. It takes time, but it is doable.
And I would imagine that on your website, there's information about that too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. It's about the courses that you can take to learn how to do this. Yeah. I truly don't think that health is Googleable. You can Google, for example, what foods are highest in pesticides. Like you can get bits of information, but you're going to waste years of your life. You're going to waste time. You're going to waste money trying to figure it out on your own. You need the shortcut so that you see results in a short period of time. And then you have the lived embodied experience of knowing, wow, this made me better. Fantastic. Okay. And so that's really the way to save time and money is just to get the education you need.
So as an N of 1, you had migraines. I'm assuming that you have fewer migraines. How much better are you now?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. In my 20s, I had headaches every day for weeks at a time. Wow. And this would happen to me multiple times a year. I have a handful of headaches a year.
That's quite a difference.
That's it.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
So back to, I think there was another fourth category.
Yeah. So nutrients, gut issues, toxins, and then the last category is hormones and adrenals. So the way this impacts people is that one of your master hormone that is responsible for making all of the things you've heard of, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, they also make your cortisol. Cortisol is your main stress chemical. When you are under stress for a long period of time, which happens quite regularly in this crazy world we live in, right? But also happens for people who are experiencing chronic pain, because pain makes your body release stress chemicals. That's a reflex. That's how your body works. So for either of those situations, you're going to deplete your hormones. There can come a point where you're just drained. Tank is dry. There's nothing left in the tank and you have to refill it. The number one thing that does that is that chronic stress that depletes these master stress chemicals that make everything else in your body. So that is a radical period of what I call self-preservation. I don't even think this is self-care. This is not bubble baths and bonbons. This is self-preservation, literally. And I think this is especially hard for us as women. My opinion is that we are very much programmed from an early age to take care of everybody else. And it can be very hard to shift all that loving care that you give to everybody else. It can be really hard to do a 180 with that and put that on yourself. And so there's a lot that needs to be learned. There are a lot of devices. I love smart devices for helping people recover, because you can really see if you're shifting your body from that stressed out fight or flight stage over into rest, repair, and recovery stage, which is what you have to do. It takes voluntary action. It's not going to happen on its own. You don't just heal on its own.
You're saying not self-care, but self-preservation technique.
Yes, I think it's that serious.
All right. So that's general migraines. So specifically around food, can you give me what you know about sugar and migraines? Like, how bad does sugar make migraines or predispose you to migraine headaches?
Yeah, here I think this is a real problem with mainstream medicine's approach to sugar and headaches, because here's what we tell people. We tell people low blood sugar causes headaches. Therefore, you need to eat some sugar or carbs every couple hours to make sure that doesn't happen. Can you imagine any worse advice for blood sugar maintenance? Yeah, you're nodding. Yes, exactly. That's terrible advice. And so really what you need to do is balance never eat naked carbs. I love that phrase. One of my friends said that once. I thought it was hilarious.
When you're talking carbs, do you mean even vegetables, even complex carbs?
I am thinking of carbs in this circumstance more as like bread, pasta, sweets. Okay. I'm thinking of it more that way. I do know that there are more nutritive carbs. But even if you want to take like beans, sweet potatoes, more nutritive carbs, always balance out those carbs with protein, fats, and fiber.
Okay.
Don't eat just carbs. Like you would, even for sweet potatoes, you don't want a meal of just sweet potatoes. You want some other stuff there. But think about what we do to breakfast. Oh my goodness. We have cereal with skim milk. We're told that oatmeal is a healthy breakfast. These things just make your blood sugar skyrocket. Then it plummets back down a couple hours later. Your insulin is kicked in, dropped your blood sugar super low. You're shaky and hungry. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to eat sugar again.
Yeah.
That just puts you in this vicious roller coaster cycle. I actually wrote an ebook about this. It's called The Food Code. Y'all, anybody who's listening, you can just go to the Food Code and download that ebook.
Did you say Food Code?
Yeah, Food Code, CODE. Okay. Yeah, it's on my website too. And what you have to do is stabilize your blood sugar from the get-go by making those choices. And for people who are still in the throes of that addiction, I would say it doesn't mean you have to just grit your teeth and bear it and get through it. If you need a piece of cake, eat the cake, but do it right after dinner when you have the proteins and the fats and the carbs in your system. Don't do it a couple hours later when it's naked carbs. Do you know what I mean? And you don't have any of those other things to balance out your blood sugar. Then you're going to wake up in the middle of the night hungry.
Yeah.
So that I think is the most important piece of blood sugar as it relates to migraines, is really just keeping your blood sugar steady.
And we know that probably the best way to do that is a ketogenic diet. Would that be what your wish list would be, that people would follow a keto diet?
It's been studied. Not everybody responds to a keto diet. Not everybody does. I'm a huge fan of intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating, where you eat in just maybe 6, 8, 10 hours a day. I think that's really important for body health as a whole. And if keto works for you, great. The only thing is there are some things that are more common in some fruits and vegetables. And I think it's really important that the brain get all of the nutrients that it needs, as much from food as possible. Supplements are supplemental, right? And so I think that most people need the magnesium in spinach or almonds, and you're going to get a little bit of carb in there. You're not going to stay keto if you're eating these things that have a little bit more carbs. So I think low carb for sure, low carb by most American standards, right?
And also a plant-based whole food would work, as long as it's whole food and not refined.
Plant-based whole foods. And as you might imagine, I'm a fan of fish.
What about your thoughts about alcohol and migraines?
Alcohol doesn't help. I don't want to villainize it, but I do want to contribute to the vast growing body of literature that tells us that a glass of wine a day is not actually good for you. A lot of people still think a drink a day is good for you. It helps you relax. It really doesn't. If you get any smart device and watch how your body responds to alcohol, you will answer that question real fast for yourself. It doesn't. It makes you feel that way. It activates some GABA receptors, makes you feel a little bit calm in the short run, but it doesn't calm your nervous system. There are much more effective ways to do that. Now, I also don't want to villainize it. The holidays are coming. If you want to have your glass of wine here and there, it's okay. But I do want people to understand it's not good for you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so traditional pharmaceutical interventions, it sounds to me like you are okay with that, but you want to, those 4 pieces that you talked about should be addressed first because that's the root. And then traditional treatment, it might need to be aggressive, especially if you're moving along into a more chronicity. Yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
If you need to take a pill to get rid of your headache, to have the bandwidth to make yourself a nice dinner that's with all the nutrients that your body needs, go for it. I think you should be very conscious of that 2-day-a-week cutoff, though. Okay. And if it's getting past that, you need to do something because it's going to spiral out of control.
What do you think about traditional pain medication like opiates?
Not a fan unless it is something that keeps you out of the emergency room. And if you need 1 opiate a month or 2 opiates a month to make it so you don't have to go to the emergency room, totally fine. That's not an addiction level. I do realize that for some people, opiates are going to ignite some addiction pathways for people. So there are some people who can't do that at all.
Yeah, probably our food addiction crowd.
Yeah, I think in certain subsets, if you have a limited quantity and it keeps you out of having to deal with the emergency room, it's a win.
Do you think that the new GLP-1s have any interaction with migraines? Yes or no?
I don't think we know yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about if we're setting ourselves up for another problem or not. What about the new migraine medication, the injections that you do once a month?
I think that those are great medications for one subset of people. My personal feeling is that if you're on one and you need an injection once a month to control your headaches, I would not continue to ignore the fact that your brain is trying to tell you something through the chronic pain that you're having. Yeah. Yes, I think it's fantastic that you can successfully mask it with one of those injections. The injections don't work for everybody, but if they do work for you, great, you can mask it. But I would encourage you to realize that the problem's not solved.
You haven't addressed the root cause.
You've just masked your pain successfully.
Okay. Now, you mentioned biohacking techniques. Can you define what that is?
Yeah, mostly what I mean by that are devices. I love smart devices, whether it's something that so many people have, an Apple Watch, or something that's more obscure, like a heart math device. I think there are so many ways we can get feedback from our bodies so that we see in real time that the interventions we're making are having an impact on the body. So, for example, I think it's really hard to meditate. For most of my life, I was able to do yoga. I was very physical, but I would sit down to meditate and just think, this just doesn't work for me. My mind is all over the place. I'm failing. I cannot clear my mind. I do not like this. It's a negative experience. Yeah. It took a very long time for me to learn different techniques that aren't the evidence-based techniques about meditation that have been shown to shift our body out of fight or flight and into recovery mode. And then to learn those techniques and then to learn how these devices can show you, yep, you did it right. You shifted your body. Great. That's 1 rep. And you have to do multiple reps to gradually sculpt your body to this place where you're living in fight or flight to a place where you're living in recovery mode. But you can do it. And you can't just do it based on how you feel. I think that you need that little, okay, yeah, you did it right from the device that you shifted. So that's what I think the true benefit of biohacking tools is that we have so many new ways to peek inside our bodies now.
Okay. So in closing, your colleagues, how are they responding to your message?
Actually, I think most of them love it because we do not have the time in mainstream medicine and in the 15, 20-minute office visit that we get to have with our people. We don't have the time to talk about how do you get a good night's sleep? How do you reduce stress in your life? We don't have the time to teach our patients recipes. Every doctor out there wants their patients to have evidence-based integrative medicine solutions for their headaches, but there's not enough time in the day to do that, to check all the boxes that insurance makes us to do, to explain the side effects of your medications to you. So I am really an adjunct to what they do. I am giving them evidence-based medicine that improves their patients' lives and makes them better. And every doctor wants their patient to be better. Every doctor wishes their patient didn't have to take so many medications. In the appropriate circumstances, what you got to do.
Yeah.
I would say overall, there's really no criticism.
Not skepticism. It's more they don't have time. So you're a complementary approach. Can you see AI as helping us in this regard? AI?
Really interesting question. I think that there may come a time when we can plug labs and genetics into some kind of an AI system and have it spit out the perfect lifestyle for you, maybe the perfect supplements for you, maybe the perfect food for you. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist yet, but it's interesting.
That leads to my next question, which is where do you see promising new areas of research in migraine treatment?
I think we're going to learn more about the impact of toxins on the brain.
Okay,
A lot of that research is because that's brain health as a whole. That's not even just migraines. I think we can be lumpers or splitters, right? And if we're splitting all neurological things into separate categories, we think, okay, Parkinson's is a whole disease, Alzheimer's is a whole disease, migraine is a whole. People call it a disease. I think it's a brain pattern. It's a set of wiring that you either possess or you don't that will make your brain respond in certain ways to certain insults. But anyway, if we look at the impact of all three of those diseases on the world and the role that toxins play in those, wow, but billions of lives. Yeah. So I think that's going to be an important area. Of course, research is going to go on into new drugs that help people in new ways. I think we're going to learn more about leaky gut and food sensitivities too. I feel like mainstream medicine is starting to wrap their arms around it a little bit.
Yeah. Are they getting their arms around the processed food industry's impact though?
Really good question. And I guess my honest answer is probably not.
Yeah, it's not sexy enough.
Yeah. I think that everybody says, it's bad, but I think that people don't understand the impact. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So what's next for you?
I just want to help as many people as I can. That's really what's next for me. I've got multiple different online courses. There's something for everybody. You can take a shallow dive into the data from your body, or you can take a deep dive into the data from your body, depending on what your bandwidth is.
Tell us how we can find out more about you.
Probably the easiest thing is if you want to watch a video about all this, you can go to migraineclass.com, sign up for that, and you'll get tons of information about references to my YouTube channel. There's an opportunity to book a spot on a free group webinar with me that you can access from there. You can go to my YouTube channel, which is just my name. So I think there are lots of ways to learn a little bit more and see if it really resonates for you, because it doesn't for everybody, of course not. But if it does feel like something that's calling to you, that really makes sense to you, you can start with free stuff and you can move all the way up to, that deep dive into the precision medicine about your body. I help people navigate the information that is already out there and available to them online without a doctor's orders. And that includes labs. Many people don't know that, but you can actually order your own labs online these days. People just don't know which ones to order or what to do with them. But I actually do work with people overseas because that information is available anywhere.
Good. Last question. If you could tell a younger version of yourself something about either migraines or processed foods, the ultra-processed food industry, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to be outside the box. And I do feel like if you really want to implement not having processed foods in your diet, it's hard. You have to be willing to step outside the box.
Yeah.
You have to ignore half the grocery store. You have to be cautious about where you eat out. You have to entertain differently when you have friends over. I think you do have to have some courage to be able to step outside the box. And I think that's what I would tell myself. Just be brave, go do it.
Yeah, right on. Thank you. That's a great way to end our talk. Thank you so much for giving us your time, Dr. Barrett.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group, I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.